So, I mean, we're doing everything safely and whatnot, right?
Okay, fair enough. Did I
Yeah.
tell you I had an argument with a guy in a fish store today? It was brilliant.
This is a great place to start. You had an
Oh yeah.
argument with a guy in the fish store. Okay.
You don't tell me when we're starting the podcast, so I just chat about what's ever been happening in my day.
No, that's
Um,
perfect.
so right, I went to this fish store, and I have a tropical fish tank for those interested. That is at 24 degrees. It sits at 24 to 25 degrees, right? And I went in and stuff like that, and I was like looking around at the fish, and they had these like fish in like the cold water section, but they look like tropical fish.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, okay, that looks.
Some of those deceiving looking fish, eh?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they look like little stingrays. They're about this big. And I was like, oh, because there's loads of algae on the inside of my tank, and I'm too lazy to continuously clean it. So I was like, well, if I get a fish that sucks the algae and eats the algae, I don't have to clean my tank.
In
So
theory, yes.
that was the purpose of the visit today.
Uh-huh.
So I walked up to this guy and I was like, oh, are these tropical? And he was like, well, they're cold tropical. And I was like, what does that mean? He was like, well, a lot of people online, they have to be kept on their own tank. And it has to be a cold water tank. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, what temperature? And he was like, well, a cold water tank. I was like, what temperature? And he was like, well, what other fish have you got? And I was like, oh, I've got catfish, and I've got like a little shark, and I've got some cichlids. And he was like, it won't stay with those. And I was like, okay, sure, okay, fine. And I just like walked off. And I like Googled the name of the fish, and the very first thing that comes up is like most commonly misconceived fish by fish stores. And I was like, this will be good. And read it, and they're like, yes, this fish prefers 20-degree water, but can be kept in 25 to 27 degree waters. And I was like, well, my tank's at 25, 24-ish at the moment. Fine by me. So I walk up, and there's a different guy there. And I'm like, I'd like 3 of those, please. And he goes, okay, fine by me. And starts like fishing them out, right? And the other guy walks up and is like, oh, I thought you said like I said, those wouldn't work for your tank. Da da da. I'm like, no, dude, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And he was like, oh well, they have to be kept at quite a cool temperature. I was like, oh okay, well, what temperature are they at now? And he was like, 24 degrees. And I was like, oh okay, well, my tank's at 24 degrees. And he's like, but you've got a tropical tank. And I went, yeah, and it's at 24 degrees. And everything's really happy. And he went, not everything can be really happy. Everything, you need to turn that tank up. It needs to be like 30 degrees. And I was like, no, everything's all right. Ooh. Everything's quite happy. Like nothing's died. Everything's quite happy. Everything eats. And he was like, well, I don't think it'll work. And I was like, well, cool. All I can do, huh?
It is in fact working at this moment.
Yeah. And I turned around to him and I was like, you know what I'm like when I get a little bit irked with people. I went, and like the other guy, by the way, is just minding his own business, fishing these fish.
Doing his job.
Yeah, because in my mind, if you work at a fish store, right, your point is to advise. And if I walk up and I say, yeah, I want that tiny fish, and I want that massive fish that's going to eat it, morally, you should turn around to me and go, no. Or go, have you got 2 tanks? But this guy was like adamant. And I turned around to him and I said, well, what temperature are they living at the moment? He said, 24 degrees. And I went, what temperature are your tropical tanks? And he went, 24 degrees. It's all on the same system. And I was like, if it's all on the same system, why does it matter? And he's like, well, they won't survive in a tropical tank. They need high flow. And I was like, I'll turn the filter up. And he was like, I don't know if that'll be powerful enough. And I was like, I'll give it a go.
Now he's just actively trying to prevent business for his store.
Yeah, and so the guy, the other guy, by the way, eventually like got these fish, gave me these fish and stuff like that. And this guy's still trying to be like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, look, I'm gonna buy them. I'm gonna try and see how it goes. It'll be fine. And the guy who owned, like, the manager of the fish store walks past and was like, oh, Hillstream Lurches. And I was like, yeah, they look really cool. And he was like, oh yeah, they're a new addition. I was like, okay. He went, just what kind of tank are you putting them in? Because we've had some people who put them in goldfish tanks and some people put them in tropical tanks. And I was like, yeah, I read online that you can keep them in both. And the manager was like, yeah, we keep them in all of our tanks. We haven't had them for a while due to COVID, but we normally keep them on all our tanks because they're really good at cleaning algae. And I was like, that's why I came in today. And you saw this guy just having a meltdown, just like, just like walked out with these fish. I was like, bye. It's like, why are you trying to prevent me?
Well, it sounds like that guy's going to need some better luck in his future. And with that, we'll kick things off to better luck next week. And I think we both needed a little bit of better luck this week. Yeah. Going into next week, we'll get to the NFL in a moment. But today's F1, they had a week off last week, and now they're in Russia. They're in Sochi.
Yeah.
And some interesting developments coming out of this one. Verstappen passing Bottas. Now, it took him 21 laps to do it, to get this better time. He was about a second faster than Bottas actually, no, it was like a tenth of a second faster on his third qualifying.
Yeah.
Or Q3, which was why he was able to get ahead of Bottas. So what happened to Bottas?
It's difficult. I think one of the subjects that we're going to talk about earlier is the future for Bottas.
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a minute.
Yeah, but he just was not able to put a decent lap together. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a Lewis Hamilton mind game, but first practice of the weekend, second practice of the weekend, Bottas consistently this season has been able to go out and be faster than Hamilton. Now, yes, in some of those sessions, Hamilton has been on a different tyre doing what's called a testing session. So he hasn't been doing qualifying simulations. But when he has, he's been slower than Bottas.
Right. And he was for Q1 and 2.
Q1, Q2, he was. Q3, he was faster than Bottas, but I think Bottas was only trialling the hard tyre, so that's understandable. But it has been consistent this year. Well, I say consistent. I think Bottas has out-qualified him once or twice. But Hamilton has just been able to find time on Bottas. And the problem is that it's starting to become the question of how much of this is the car being amazing and how much of this is Hamilton. I could understand that maybe Valtteri didn't get a decent lap in, but Bottas was a 31.9. Hamilton was a 31.3. So that's 600th of a second and some change that you're behind your teammate.
And Verstappen was able to squeak his way ahead of him by a tenth.
The Red Bull car, and this has been reported about the Albon and Gasly debate, is that the Red Bull car is set up to how Max Verstappen likes to drive, and a lot of people can't get on with it.
Right.
It's completely it's really good for how Max wants to drive because he likes to push the front end through the corners. He likes to, most drivers want the rear end to fail first because that's easier to control. Max likes the front end to go first. The problem with that is that that's not how most drivers work.
Specifically, that's not how Albon works.
No.
And why he sits in 10th after at Q3.
Yeah. So I think Max just is the only thing Red Bull can do now is just try all the lunacy, all the ridiculous things, try what they can to try and split the Mercedes, because that's the only way that they're really going to get anywhere near close. But yeah, it's just Max was just able to pull something out of the bag today. I think if we work down the qualifying order, so obviously Hamilton in first, he's now equaled Lewis Hamilton for pole positions.
Hamilton's equaled Hamilton and
Max Schumacher.
Okay.
And is well in line to max him for race wins this weekend.
Yep.
Which will be very interesting.
Well, then we got Verstappen in second, Bottas in third, Perez climbing his way back up pole in fourth, Ricciardo being consistent.
Let's go back to let's go back to Perez for a minute.
Yeah.
Because I know we need to get through this, but this is very interesting. Sergio Perez has the car that doesn't have all the upgrades.
Right.
He was due to get the aerodynamic upgrades and the car upgrades this weekend. But because his teammate, Lance Stroll, ruined his entire chassis not last week and the weekend before, they haven't been able to produce the parts, and they've put those parts on Stroll's car. But Stroll
put together his worst qualifying of the season, I think.
All the way down in 13th.
Yeah.
So that's a difficult one for Racing Point. Going down, Daniel Ricciardo, who just seems to be on an absolute worldie at the moment.
He's really figured it out.
Yeah, I can't wait for him to get in a McLaren with a Mercedes engine, because I think that's the only thing holding him back at the moment. Because once he's got that McLaren, which we know is a beast through the corners, it's a fast car, put the more powerful engine behind it, I'd be very, very surprised if they weren't challenging for podiums.
Ricciardo and Norris is going to be a phenomenal team next year. I don't think there's any argument against that.
No.
And speaking of, we got Seitz, his current teammate Norris, a couple of places down there.
Yeah.
Ocon in between them, who's been really improving over the course of this season, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think depending on who they put in that seat next to him, I think actually that's been confirmed. It's going to be Fernando Alonso.
Yeah.
I think his days in F1 are numbered until the end of that contract, maybe till the end of this year.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it time and time again, and this is the problem with people, as we said last week, putting people next to the likes of Verstappen and George Russell. Esteban has not out-qualified Ricciardo all year.
Yeah.
And there's no way of arguing around that. There's no way of explaining that. You were simply slower than someone in the same piece of equipment, which means you're slower.
Well,
So
that's why the Stroll Perez thing throws me off so much, with next year the team going to Aston and bringing on Vettel, who has struggled to get into the top 10. Meanwhile, Stroll and Perez have basically been at a similar level, except for this specific race, throughout the whole season. They've kind of been battling each other on qualifying, and
it's not a
clear cut.
It's not a clear cut between those two. It's not clear cut between those two.
I really don't get that. But anyway, we'll round out the top 10. Norris in 8th, Gasly in 9th, and Albon, as we mentioned, down in 10th, who's, as we've kind of discussed, having a bit of a rough time to start the second half of the season.
But I don't think that well, he had his podium, don't forget that. But I don't think that is one red, and this pisses me off, because every single podcast apart from us has seemed to completely ignore this information. Albon has not got the same car as Verstappen.
Right.
Albon's car is a couple of upgrades and parts behind Verstappen's, because they are pushing the development so hard.
While it's also set up for Verstappen, because they're both set up this way and not the way that Albon likely wants to drive it instead.
Yeah. And it's not like you can revert the car. The car is designed to handle in a way that Max Verstappen likes. So Alex Albon being in 10th, is that because there's something different going on with his car? Is that something to do with him not having the same parts as Max? Or is it just simply to do with the fact that the engine he's got in that car is having problems at the moment? We saw it for Max for the last 2 rounds. it's all well and good being able to put in a qualifying result, but if he can't make it around the first corner, bit pointless.
Right. I think it could be all of the above, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I mean, the fact that Albon was able to get up into onto the podium means that he's capable. You know, some people did have to go down in front of him to make it happen, but it's still the fact that he was able to do it with the car that he's not comfortable in means that, you know, imagine what he would be able to do if he had a car that he was comfortable in, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully that comes around for him next year. The finish of this race tomorrow.
I think.
I mean, it's always a safe bet to basically go Hamilton in first, unless he has a major issue, and those are so difficult to predict with Mercedes because they're so consistent.
It's also when he has had a major issue, hasn't stopped him, has it?
Not really.
Wheel fell off the car.
Yeah.
Still made it. Literally won the race on 3 wheels.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Hamilton, Ricciardo, Verstappen.
Ricciardo coming up in second. Okay, write it down.
I am writing it.
I think my prediction is going to be, I'll go Hamilton, Verstappen, and Ricciardo.
Okay. And we're both gambling. We're both so confident that Daniel Ricciardo's finally going to get a podium.
Yeah.
My thought behind that is that you have 2 people behind Valtteri Bottas that are very motivated. You've got Sergio Perez, who has been told your seat isn't there next year.
Yeah. Bye.
Doesn't matter what happens for the rest of the season. He could win every single race. His seat is gone.
Right.
So I think he wants a podium to prove.
Well, yeah, because something like that puts you in one of 2 mentalities, right? It's, well, why should I give a damn then, since I've just been told to screw off?
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, I'm going to prove to them why they shouldn't have told me to screw off. And Perez's mentality, absolutely the latter.
Oh, yeah. He's annoyed.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the way he's got to be thinking at the moment is he isn't thinking of what's best for Racing Point. Because they've shown him what's best for Racing Point. He's thinking, what's best for me? And what's best for him going forward in the future. Now, unfortunately, all of the Formula One seats next year are kind of defined. The only one that is available that people are considering where someone's out of contract is Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo. Now, a lot of people have already said that given the fact that Mick Schumacher is very close to and very high up in the Formula 2 standings, that they are going to get rid of Giovinazzi. And because Alfa draw from the Ferrari talent program, they are going to bring Mick Schumacher in and give him that seat.
Well, let's make that a quick discussion point, because I don't think that's right. I don't think they should do that just yet, because if Mick Schumacher, the son of Michael Schumacher, is not in a Ferrari, then why bother? Give him another year under the Ferrari banner in F2, which is exactly where he belongs. He can become even more dominant there. And then next year, like 2022 season, you look at, okay, did the pairing of Sainz and Leclerc work? If not, I think you go Leclerc-Schumacher.
Yeah, I think that's going to be partially their eventual aim. But the thing is that one, there is such a dramatic jump from Formula 2 to Formula 1.
Right.
It's huge. You saw...
They look totally different, just as a baseline.
I mean, you're talking a spec series where, yes, admittedly, they have an incredible, they have the downforce, they have the DRS, and they have a lot of horsepower from it's a V6, but V6 turbo. It's very powerful. But you're talking I mean, the numbers that the F1 teams put out, the F2 cars are pushing 450 to 500 brake horsepower. Renault, whose cars are, around fifth on the grid at the moment, their engineers are saying they're pushing 1,000 horsepower. The cars are lighter. You've got more of a dynamic car because it's not exactly... There's only so much you can change when everyone has the same car. A lot of parts are going to be fixed.
Well, they're all V8s too, right? So you've got two extra cylinders.
You have 2 extra cylinders, a buttload more horsepower. You've got an electric ERS system, and it's. I think the best one is Silverstone. At Silverstone, the last corner at Silverstone, if you're in an F2 car, you're hitting it at 120 mile an hour. If you're in a Formula One car, you're at 150 to 165.
Right. So you're looking at about a 30 to 40 horsepower, mile per hour difference.
Yeah. So what they did with Charles Leclerc, which I think is Ferrari's way, is he can't go straight into Ferrari because the seat isn't there. Carlos Sainz has a deal for the next 2 to 3 years. So unless you're going to pay him the entirety of that contract, and because that contract has performance bonus, because that contract has performance bonuses in it, you're going to have to pay him all of those as well. So it's going to cost you the thick end of probably 50, 60 million pounds. Because there'll be a clause in there that if I win the world championship, you owe me X amount of money.
Yeah.
So the only seat that is available for, without Ferrari basically throwing money at it is Antonio Giovinazzi's seat. He's been out-qualified by Kimi Räikkönen consistently. Hasn't done it this weekend, but he is the faster guy. They have the choice at the end of this year. They can either not continue with Kimi or they can bring Mick Schumacher into the seat. Now, if it was me, I would go, okay, here is our future, one of our future prodigies, because Charles Leclerc is evidently going to be Ferrari's baby for the next few years. And Mick Schumacher, that last name, you want that name on the side of the car again.
Of course. You're just going to sell tickets that way. You're going to
sell tickets. You're going to sell cars. You're going to sell adverts. All this kind of stuff. I would put Schumacher in a car with Kimi Räikkönen because you have someone that has been around, that has done it all, that has seen it all, and has been in every single scenario possible. Who better to learn from?
I would be my only concern with Raikkonen would be his attitude. Does he care enough about mentoring Mick Schumacher?
I don't think he cares about much, to be honest.
Exactly.
But he's going to be able to put the car in a decent spot.
Right.
He's going to be able to put the setup in a decent spot. He's kind of a fixed point as a Formula One driver goes.
Well, and giving him something other than, make your way around the track and we'll pay you this amount of money.
Yeah.
Giving him something other than that might actually motivate him more. Yeah. Maybe.
And then you've got an incredible yardstick to measure your future, your guy going into the Ferrari seat. Because at the moment, if you measure him, let's say the roles are reversed and you measure him against Antonio Giovinazzi. Antonio Giovinazzi's never won a race in Formula One, never been near the sharp end of the stick. You don't know what you're measuring against. Whereas if you measure him against Kimi Räikkönen's won the world championship. He's been at the sharp end of the stick and won races. So you know that if in the same car Mick Schumacher's beating Kimi Räikkönen, okay, we've actually got something here.
Well, and this is a discussion we can absolutely check in on again at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. We go through the off season and into next year. And the Bottas conversation is kind of the same thing. I mean, I think we can just kind of say that, like, we know his future right now.
Yeah.
Still going to be with Mercedes. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I think we're both on the same page with, for how much longer based on the relationship that Hamilton and Bottas seem to have.
Yeah. Well, the problem is I think the first couple of years, I don't think that they had the problem is with the top, the relationship in the garage has to really be managed. The problem with Hamilton and Nico Rosberg was you had two guys that. Now I'm a Hamilton fan, going to be, that I don't think Nico Rosberg knew that he could beat Hamilton. So the only way he did it, and this has been well proven, was he played mind games.
Right.
And stuff like that. And he would push Hamilton to a point where the two cars would crash. We had two Mercedes collide with each other, and for Mercedes, that's the worst thing in the world. Now, at the moment, they have Hamilton, who's pounding around at the front of the grid. No question of his talent. And you've got Bottas next to him. Now, while Bottas is within 200th of a second of him, 100th of a second of him, and staying close the entire race, and they have consistent 1-2s, Mercedes are going to sit back and go, we've got a good one here.
Yeah.
They're not arguing with each other. They're not getting upset with each other. And frankly, they're not getting to a point where they're having a problem. The time I think we're going to start having an issue is, and we've already seen the little inklings of it, Bottas starting to want to oppose, things like Hamilton. We saw it in the last race. I want the opposite tyres to Hamilton.
Yeah.
He didn't say, I want a different strategy. He said, give me whatever Hamilton doesn't have. Which is him starting, in my opinion, to get frustrated.
And I think as well, the priority is always going to be Hamilton.
Yeah.
And Bottas is, I think, getting to the point where he's tired of that.
Yeah.
He thinks he can be a number one with, maybe not Mercedes, but perhaps another team, because, Hamilton's going to be a number one forever and ever, amen.
Yeah.
So, I think when Bottas's contract is up, he's probably going to move somewhere else, or is at least going to try to.
Yeah.
And try and be a number one.
Yeah, I could see that. The thing for me as well for Mercedes is that there's the deficit between the two is going to start to become a problem, because you've seen how much of an issue that Red Bull have raised when Alex Albon is, 0.5 of a second, 0.4 of a second behind Verstappen. Now, that problem is amplified due to the fact that 0.4 of a second, that's 4 drivers in the midfield now. If you're 0.4 of a second off of Verstappen, you've got the Red Bulls in there and you've got other cars in there. Now, because obviously the Mercedes is so much faster, even if Bottas is 0.5, 0.6 of a second behind Hamilton, he's still in second. So they don't care. But this, I think, this weekend, I hope, doesn't start to be the bad precedent of him being 0.6 of a second behind, because that means that Max Verstappen can slot in between the two.
Right.
Which causes problems.
Which he's done this week. And, both of us have gone against Bottas, even being on the podium this weekend.
Yeah.
And so what does that say about our confidence in Bottas now?
Because
based on the fact that he's... I think I agree. It looks like he's more concerned about opposing Hamilton than running a good race.
Yeah. And I also think as well, if I'm Mercedes at the end of the year, if I've got to look and I've got the choice between now, George Russell is a Mercedes driver. One of the reasons that he's in that Williams is because it's got a Mercedes engine.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the person waiting for that seat. That's not unknown. If you're sat at the end of the year going, okay, well, what from a marketing point is going to make us more money? Now, for Mercedes, Hamilton fits a market. If you look at Valtteri Bottas, I'm sure he's very big in Finland. I don't know what the market for new cars is in Finland, but if you're looking at the new kind of generation of guys coming through, they're all on Twitch, they're all social media magnets. I'd want George Russell in the car. More simply just for the social side of it, for the broadcasting, for the guy that's a bit more open, that's got a lot more kind of personality to him. Will that cause problems with him and Hamilton? I don't know. But I'd much rather see what George Russell can do with a car at the sharp end of the grid than continue to see Valtteri Bottas in second or third. Just my opinion.
It changes things up, and I mean, that's the problem with F1 in general, is that it's become rather stale.
Yeah.
And we always seem to look for those races that become an absolute shamble when people crash out and suddenly it's Alex Albon in the top 3 and, George Russell's getting points because 5, 6, 7 cars have fouled out, or, you have a 4-car crash off the straight. All this stuff is more exciting now because otherwise par for the course is just boring.
Yeah, I mean they stopped showing Hamilton at the front now because
Hamilton's winning
at the front, and he'll maintain the gap and he'll pull away. It'll be fine.
Yeah, great, lovely.
Speaking of like cars that are a bit difficult to deal with and a bit wrong, Ferrari have got to be just like, I don't know what their plan is. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, and Vettel's crash today was...
You saw it. He had exactly the same problem that Leclerc had a couple of weeks ago. He was going through a corner, same corner that he'd gone through before. I don't think he was exceptionally going much faster, but the car just suddenly went, nah, I'm going to be backwards now. And he had no control over it.
Never mind. I forgot how to be a car.
Yeah. Evidently, that car's very difficult to control, very hard to keep hold of, and neither driver can push with it. So,
right. Well, and what was it? Last race or the race before, it just decided it no longer wanted brakes.
Yeah, that's quite scary.
Right? Bye. Yep. Never mind. Oh well. So yes, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Who will need better luck next week? I think we both seem to agree it'll be Bottas who needs better luck next week. And to the NFL, so I'm looking through, and I actually think I did quite well on my predictions, which almost means that it was a fairly unremarkable weekend last weekend, simply for the fact that it was a predictable weekend.
Okay.
Start right off the bat with the Bears on Sunday.
Well,
Giants. So that was a win for me.
That was a loss for me, but I think that's going to be kind of the history of the Giants season because they've lost their most important player.
Yeah, the Rams just obliterated the Eagles. I'm pretty worried. Philadelphia, like I think I said it last week, Philadelphia went from a rather underwhelming Stanley Cup playoff run and got almost beat by the Montreal Canadiens and then actually beat by the Boston Bruins, which I don't think, or no, that was Tampa Bay that beat Boston. Philadelphia lost to the Islanders. There it is. Who is an unremarkable team that just keeps winning because they have the best coach ever, perhaps. And now Philadelphia, I mean, I've seen like TikToks and stuff of Philadelphia fans that like the second the Flyers were eliminated, they just ripped their Flyers gear off and there was the Eagles gear on underneath. And now
that was the point you were making. I was struggling to put the fucking dots together there, bud. I was like, he's got confused between NHL and hockey. How do I politely bring this up? Okay. So you're saying it's the fans' fault. Okay, well.
No, they're just like, it's unfortunate. I feel bad for Philadelphia fans, despite the fact that they're the biggest bunch of lunatics out there. Yeah. Now they've got a team that's gone 0-2.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, if they go 0-3 against the team that they're going to face this weekend, oh boy. But anyways, so that was
Falcons was Cowboys just
really close game.
Yeah, Bucks Panthers was Bucks.
Yep, and that was good. So that's what I figured would happen with Tom Brady. Starting to figure it out now. The 49ers obliterating the Jets. I think that's,
the Steelers not completely destroying the Broncos.
Yeah, and this is what I was thinking about with the Steelers. Like they're a good team, but
Yeah.
eh,
It's one of those ones that you kind of go, where's that come from?
yeah.
Okay, you're good this year. Okay.
Question mark.
Question mark. I mean, they've kind of built their team the right way. They've kind of gone, right, let's focus on some real great defense. They've got, I don't know what they put in the water wherever TJ Watt and JJ Watt and whatever the last brother's called, MJ Watt,
The Watts.
the Watts are. They've got 2 Watts on their team, by the way. They've got one at fullback and one at linebacker. They're just beasts. TJ Watt is just, in that game against the Broncos, I watched it. TJ Watt is the highlights. He's just everywhere all over the field.
Always. Here we go.
Yeah, you look at the right side and you go, oh, the running back on the right side. Oh, TJ Watt's there. Oh, the left.
Nope.
Oh, he's there as well. And you're like, did they have a middle linebacker? Did they have a left side and a right side? No, they just have TJ Watt.
Yeah. Titans Jags. I think that was a closer game than the Titans wanted it to be.
Which completely confuses me about. I know we had this plan before that we weren't going to stop at specific games and we were going to have some that we talk about next week, but that confuses me because the Titans are a good team.
Yeah.
And that really confuses me to certain teams' kind of strength. We'll go into Thursday Night Football soon. But the Jags are still able to put up 30 points. So evidently there's not even that much wrong with that offense because they're still being able to... Oh, have I muted myself?
Well, is it... No, you're good. Is it the Titans, or is it the Jags offense, or is it the Titans running defense? James Robinson, 16 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown. Is it the Titans run defense? I think that's a genuine question that we'll have to keep tabs on as far as Tennessee goes. Packers, Lions. Really obviously massive win for the Packers. Bills, Dolphins. We got Bills.
That does show me, though, that...
This is my first loss.
The Patriots division, which is the division, is very strong this year. It's not the Patriots destroying everyone in their division and carrying on with their lives. Colts, Vikings.
Yeah, something's rot in Minnesota, I think.
I don't understand this Vikings team. You had an amazing season with Case Keenum. Mm-hmm. You've got a great receiving core. You've got everything. But you look at Kirk Cousins as this god, and he's let you down.
Consistently. 113 yards, 3 interceptions.
Get rid of him.
Yeah.
Give bloody Case Keenum a call and say, Case, can you come over for like $10 million a year? Which in quarterback money is nothing, but he'll go, yeah, sure. And then you can just draft some weapons around him, and you'll have a better team.
When you're supposed to be a contender and you make Phillip Rivers look good,
problem.
So that's my first loss, and that's exactly the reason why. And then we go to the Cardinals, who won.
I went Washington on this, and that surprised me. To be honest,
you surprised yourself from last week, eh?
Yeah.
Ravens, fairly dominant game over the Texans, actually. I mean, we can stop on that for a minute if you'd like. Lamar Jackson, a somewhat underwhelming game based on his...
I think that someone, like, the Texans have got one of the best defensive fronts in football. That's not... You can't really argue that. Defensively, they are... Like, their defensive front line is really good.
Yeah. But
there needs to be someone that figures out how to stop these guys that run and escape the pocket and extend the play. Someone needs to figure it out, because if the Texans can't hold them... Like, you're never going to stop Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson. You're never going to stop these guys scoring points. It's just not going to happen. No, you're never going to hold Patrick Mahomes to a 0-point game. But you need to hold him to a point where your offense can keep them within, that should be the kind of logic is, well, we can't hold them to nothing. So can we hold them to 16 points? Because if you can hold them to 16 points, your offense has just got to do the work. But
and that was the key. The Texans held Deshaun Watson to 17 yards rushing.
There you go.
He couldn't go anywhere, right? And meanwhile, Lamar Jackson had 54 yards on 16 carries, so he was able to just run circles around the Texans' defense.
The next one,
Chargers.
I did want to say about that shows me something, because that kind of proves my last point, doesn't it? Now, the Chargers didn't hold Patrick Mahomes to a no game. He didn't not score.
Mm-hmm. He had a good game.
They held him to 20 points.
Right.
And it went to overtime. Now, it went to overtime and they managed to score the kick, which was down to the kicker because he kicked 3 field goals at the end of it.
Yeah.
To bring it up. But they held him.
Right. And I would even say that it's not necessarily what am I trying to say here? My brain just went dead.
Did it? Okay.
So, no, Mahomes was 27 for 47. So he was 50% effectively throwing. Just over 50%. So the coverage on the Chiefs was better than we've seen in a long time.
And again, this is where people need to start looking at numbers, not me, because that's not what I'm paid to do. But
you're paid?
You're not?
Did you already get a sponsor? My God.
Yeah, I did. If we were talking about Baker Mayfield being 50% effective and throwing... Did he throw it? I don't think he threw an interception.
Against the Bengals?
No. If we were talking about Patrick Mahomes, if we were talking about Baker Mayfield being 50% effective, we'd still be talking about, he's useless, let's get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
When it's Patrick Mahomes, it's a different conversation.
Yeah, people don't care. Patriots, Seahawks. It was a tough one for you, mate.
Well,
a good game.
A good game, but the problem is that, and this is something that a lot of teams are going to have to figure out, DK Metcalf is a beast. I mean, if we just have a look, 4 for 92 and a touchdown.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's only received 4 passes, but he's taken each of them 23 yards and scored a touchdown. Stephon Gilmore, who has a lot of the time been one of the best corners in football, couldn't hold him. The guy's just taller, bigger, and yeah.
Well, and Russell Wilson was really using his entire receiving core in this game. Each of them had a touchdown.
Yeah. If we look at the Patriots, one thing that, and this is an ongoing argument between me and Jared, but
we'll have it at some point on the podcast.
Yeah, Julian Edelman, future Hall of Fame fucking receiver, had 8 for 179, which is his highest ever. 22.4 average. Just a great game.
And that tells me that the Patriots offense is basically a one-trick pony.
Yeah, if you look down the rest of it, N'Keal Harry,
he's got a good future though.
Yeah,
we can rest assured on that.
Yeah, he needs to start moving. He needs to start becoming the threat that we know him as. And then, God, I'm looking through Patriots receiver. Demir Boyd,
Bird.
I don't even know who the guy's name is. He could have worked with Chick-fil-A. It's a Patriots receiving core, okay? We know that. Yeah, I love the way that you first receiver Julian Edelman, who's the number 1 at the moment. 8 for 179. Really good game for him. N'Keal Harry, 8 for 72. I'd really like to see, if we want to go anywhere, we need to start seeing more of this. Dorian Bird, whatever his name is, 72 yards, 6 for 72. I mean, pretty good. And then it's a running back.
Mm-hmm. Who was utilized more as a receiver. Meanwhile, our actual running back, Sonny Michel, was not used at all. Basically,
no. I mean,
the run defense was pretty solid for the Seahawks. Michel couldn't get anywhere, and he was never thrown to.
Anyway, moving on.
So a bit of a rough one for the Patriots, but still able to get 30 points. Saints Raiders. I think this is probably one of the most interesting games of this past week. The Raiders 34, Saints 24.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, I think this is a breakout game for Derek Carr. 3 touchdowns, 284 yards, 28 for 38 passing. He was utilizing both the run and the pass game. Joshua Jacobs had a great running game, 27 carries for 88 yards. And then Darren Waller was the guy. 12 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown.
It's a pretty good game.
It seems like the Saints could have prevented most of this by just sticking 2 guys to Waller.
Yeah. Cover him.
Yeah.
Drew Brees again. I mean, some people put Drew Brees as the greatest. He's amazing, blah, blah, blah. 26 for 38, 312 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception.
It's a good game.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the second coming.
No.
But
it is what it is.
And then Jags Dolphins just somehow managed to blow it away.
Yeah. I picked the Jags. I think I understand why I picked the Jags.
I picked the Jags as well.
Yeah, I think that was the safe way to go, except for the fact that Fitzmagic showed up for 160 yards.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He seems to be one of these guys that if Ryan Fitzpatrick wakes up in the morning and rolls out of the right side of his bed, he's amazing.
Yeah. Doesn't happen that often. He's one of those guys that you look at, like, you watch one game of and go, Jesus Christ, who is this man? Yeah.
And then the next game you go, who is that guy? Is that the same quarterback? Jaguars, I think, struggling from a lack of a decent run game. And, I mean, there's no...
I was going to just say a lack of good players.
Yeah, I think they are kind of looking towards this next week, the next season now, and going, right, well, we've got a quarterback now who we know can kind of play. He's talented, but we really need some kind of, new powerful player, someone new, someone great. Kind of do the reverse of what the Giants did, which is you initially start off by drafting a running back, which you can base the team around, and then you get a quarterback. And then if I was the Giants, you then start recruiting in decent wide receivers, maybe some defensive side of the ball stuff, and you build the team from there.
Well, that was a good week for me, actually. I only got 2 wrong there, the Vikings and the Saints. So I went 14 for 16. And that gives me 24 out of a possible 32 points for the past 2 weeks.
9 for 16.
Oof.
Not great.
I think that was worse than last week, too.
Yeah. So I'm currently on 15.
Out of 32.
Out of 32.
Well, you got some work to do, mate.
Yeah.
You need better luck next week. And
admittedly, the first one on the board, the Giants, really let me down because I was I didn't predict that Saquon Barkley would have an ACL tear.
Fair.
Couldn't really have predicted that.
Tough to predict those kind of things.
That's kind of their season going.
Yeah. I don't think they'd have been able to. Oh, it's still go.
Because I think they're having to write an entire new playbook now.
Yeah.
Because the guy that was the backup to Saquon evidently was just thinking about like pizza lead, like this with him on the bench, and then Saquon gets carted off, and he goes,
"Oh,
I have to play. You okay?
My Hawaiian's outside though."
Yeah. You want me to do what? Okay, so you not only want me to run the ball with an offensive line that's about as effective as a colander,
yeah,
but you also want me to receive as well because we've got no one in the. Okay. I mean, I'll try.
Yeah.
Right, let's go on to next week.
Yeah, they're not going to right the ship anytime soon.
No.
I'm going to go with the Browns against Washington.
Yeah.
I don't see Washington getting anywhere anytime soon.
I think the Browns have had the kick up the bottom that they. I don't know why I didn't swear then.
That's okay.
I went to say arse, and then I realised earlier in the podcast I'd said the F word and said pissed. So I don't know why I stopped myself.
Are you trying to right the ship on your own end?
No, that ship's long gone, my friend. It's gone.
Down the Marianas Trench, right?
Yeah, it's gone.
I'm going to go Bengals.
Bengals? Really?
Yep. I think you're going to go Eagles, and I think we can split on this one and see what happens.
I'm going to go Eagles because the Bungles are terrible.
Yeah, they are. But the Eagles have, I think, had a more embarrassing start to the season.
Okay.
And I think it's only going to get worse.
Your prediction is that the Bungles are more used to embarrassment, so they're going to be able to better deal with it. Okay.
And they were quite close against the Browns last week. 35-30. That's they were right there, and they were right there against the Chargers in week 1. Whereas the Eagles have been just obliterated.
Dire. Yeah. Okay. The next one is the Patriots, the Raiders. I have to go with the Patriots because it's me.
Yeah, I'm going to go Raiders just because of the way they performed against the Saints.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that'll continue. I think the Falcons get their first win.
Okay.
The Bears.
I can't really argue with that one. The next one's a difficult one. Bills, Rams.
And I mean, the safe pick is the Rams.
I'm going to go with the Bills. I'm going to risk it for the chocolate biscuit, as they say.
You're going to go Bills?
Yeah.
I'll stick with Rams then. We'll split quite a lot on these ones then.
Steelers, Texans was one of the ones I think we said we were going to stop and chat about. So let's do that. I think that the Texans at this point are having, this is the point where they need to turn around and go, no, we are a good team. We are amazing. As we were saying earlier before we started the podcast, that it is not fair to call the Texans an 0-2 team because they played the Super Bowl champs in their first game, which, I mean, that's a team, like, nothing's changed on the Chiefs. They haven't lost anyone of any note. So those guys have come off a Super Bowl and come in and gone, oh, okay, let's get kicking again. And they have. What a surprise. And then they played the Ravens, which is another team which I think were on track to do that well last year and were annoyed at themselves that they didn't do that well. So now I think
they're on it again.
This week, I think, is a pivotal game for the Texans. And I think it's one of those things where they start to go, right, we need to pick this up. So I'm going to go with the Texans on this.
I think I'm going to agree. I'm not going to go against them. I mean, I just don't like the Steelers to begin with.
Yeah.
And I do agree. I think this is the time where the Texans show up and go, oh, don't forget to take us seriously too.
Yeah, yeah. And then the thing for me is, let me just get their schedule up. So, admittedly, so their first 2 games, Chiefs, Ravens. Now, after the Steelers,
I was going to say, it looks like it starts to get a little bit easier.
so you've got Steelers, which I hope they win. You've then got the Vikings, which it's the Vikings, guys.
Yeah,
You then got the Jaguars, the Titans, which I think
that should be a good game.
this should be a good game. The Packers, now I don't know how that's going to go because the Packers are very talented at the moment and they are just playing well. Then the Jags again. Then the Browns. Now, the game against the Browns at that point depends how the Browns' season have gone. If the Browns are a winning team at that point, so what I mean is that they've won more games than they've lost going into that point.
Above 500, yes.
Yeah. Then I think it's the Browns. But then that's another one of those games where those kind of teams, depending on how they wake up in the morning, could be very close. Texans, Patriots, I mean, it depends what we're doing. Depends what we feel like because we're kind of on very thin ice because we've got a team that is based around Cam running, Julian catching, close to 200 yards a game. Not much of a run, and that's it. Now, if any point of that fails, we're stuck. The entire playbook this year is designed around having a running QB, and the guy we've got as a backup can't run.
Right.
So
to sum up, I think the Texans are going to have a bit of an easier time as the season wears on. They've got the difficult stuff, some of it at least, out of the way, and this will be the week that they start to step it up again.
Mm-hmm.
Titans, Vikings. I'm going to go the Titans on this one.
I was about to say, are you high?
Yeah.
Is you feeling okay?
I don't have, my eyes aren't red, so we're good.
Cool.
Panthers, Chargers. I think this is a pretty underwhelming game. I'm going to go Chargers because they're the home team.
I'm going to go Chargers because I think any team that can hold the Chiefs to 20 points is going to be able to hold the Panthers to maybe a score.
If that.
Colts, Jets, Colts.
I mean, I think the Jets have the potential to be a winless team this year.
I mean, it makes sense.
It's going to be tough. Seahawks for me on the next one.
Yeah.
The Cowboys. The way the Seahawks have been playing recently, it's too difficult to go against them, and the Cardinals too, especially against these inferior teams because the Lions are very much inferior to the Cardinals now. They've been able to pick themselves up and figure it out.
The Detroit Lions are just one of those teams that haven't been very good for a long while. Broncos, Bucks. Yeah. I think this is a game that is effectively an offensive practice. It's going to be, right, I know who I can depend on now. I've started to get that chemistry with all the different guys. Let's drop some bombs.
And it's just going to be a shooting gallery, and Brady's going to put up, I could say Brady's going to put up 400 yards.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Easily. He's going to have a couple of guys that know that they can run deep. And he's got the confidence in them now that they can run deep. And he's just going to go, oh, okay. If it's one-on-one coverage, it's not like Chris Hogan. You can actually you can beat someone. Oh, cool. Right, I'm going to throw this to you now.
Here you go. Now, I think this is, again, another one of the better games this week. The Saints being in it again. And this one now against the Packers. I think this kind of comes down to, I guess, who decides to show up slightly better at the quarterback position, Brees or Rodgers.
I think this shows some chinks in Drew Brees.
Yeah.
Some problems because...
Well, because I was going to go Packers.
I'm going to go Packers too,
Okay.
because I think that Drew Brees is the hallmark of a quarterback that demands so much money that they then struggle to put a team around him.
Right.
He's thrown an interception every single game this season. Now, I know there's only been 2 games, and that's not much to say about. But I think that it becomes a shooting gap. It becomes an offensive game, and the Saints can't keep up.
Well, I think that wraps that up rather nicely. And fine. And then this is the
I was
big
going to say, we've got another game.
Yeah, that wraps that game up.
Oh, okay.
What I'm saying.
So you're being more hostly than you normally are. I'm not used to it.
Oh, well, I'm trying to move the conversation along.
Oh, okay. That's what you're trying to do. And I'm just staying on it, aren't I?
Well, it's because we had story time with Gav to kick off the show, which we haven't, which was that was a brand new segment. So we have to keep things. Yes.
This is why we need an Instagram profile, right? We should have a sports podcast Instagram profile, and I just post pictures of my fish.
And that'll just confuse the populace.
Yeah.
They'll be like, "Where are the sports? It's just fish." What's going on?
I can't call this one.
This one's the hardest one to call.
This could be a easily 40 points. Like, I'm talking 40 points to 40 points game, but I couldn't call it. I want to say the Chiefs, and I'm going to write down the Chiefs.
Okay, you write down the Chiefs. I'll write down the Ravens.
Okay.
So that, this is the biggest game probably of the season so far.
Yeah.
And we're splitting on it.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody will get the points.
Yeah.
And then it's unfortunate that we have to add this game to this, to the end, because, of course, it is the Thursday game. We record on Friday or Saturday today based on my schedule. But it's the Broncos and the Jets, and I don't think anyone cares. But I have to go Broncos.
It's 2 teams that you're just...
Why?
Yeah.
Actively. Why?
Even that, you're just like, oh, these 2 teams are playing? Okay. I'm sure their fan bases are very excited, but...
Yeah. That's great. I mean, what is much more exciting is the Stanley Cup Finals. And we'll end up with hockey again because it's still happening, and we could potentially have a Stanley Cup winner as of tonight.
Yes.
So you may be listening to this podcast watching the NHL championship wrap up.
Yeah. And one of us will have been wrong.
Correct.
And if it's me, it's understandable because I know nothing about hockey. If it's Jared, it's going to be embarrassing, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what I'm really hoping for, because that's the point of Better Luck Next Week, is I prove that with no information about sports and purely gut reactions and maybe looking at the scores for the past few games, you can be just as good as a professional.
Well, and the thing is about this series is that, I went 7 because Anton Hudobin, the goaltender for the Dallas Stars, had been as good as has been very, very good. But Tampa Bay has just solved him. They've just totally been able to figure him out. And regardless of however many goals Dallas scores, Tampa has always scored another one.
Yeah.
They've just found a way to get the puck behind Hudobin in whatever way they need to.
I mean...
and that was the story of last night's game, because this is a back-to-back, which I think is stupid.
Yeah.
Why are you playing back-to-backs in the Stanley Cup Final? Why?
Maybe because you want people out drinking on a Saturday night and then people out drinking on a Sunday night, Jared?
Well, Friday, Saturday.
Saturday, sorry.
But we're not supposed to be encouraging that.
Oh, yeah. It's okay, Jared, because in the UK, you can go to the pub until 10 o'clock. Because COVID doesn't work after 10 o'clock at night, apparently.
Ooh.
Or no, it doesn't work up until 10 o'clock at night. And then
right.
So you can have 50 people down the pub getting as drunk as possible, but at 10 o'clock they all have to go home because that's when COVID comes out, because it's some kind of like night monster, apparently, according to our government.
Right. So let's shove 50 plastered human beings out onto the street all at once.
Yeah. This isn't a political podcast, Jared. Let's stay on point. So let's just have a look through the scores. And this was going to kind of be my point, was that, okay, first game, 1 goal Lightning, 4 goal Stars. Second game, 2-5. Third game, 4-5. Oh, no, sorry.
That's the fourth game. You missed.
Yeah, second game, 3-2. And then the thing I'm seeing is the past 2 games, they've scored 5 points. Now, all I'm seeing here is that apart from the first game, the Lightning are consecutively scoring. They're putting points on the board. They've realised, as I said, just keep pinging the damn goalie.
Well, and that's the story for Dallas too. Yes, they've been able to score, but they're capitalizing on a minimal amount of chances throughout all of these games, and that's just not how you're going to beat such a complete team like the Lightning are.
There's a point, and I think this is the same with all sports, NHL, all this kind of stuff. When you're playing a team of such a high talent, you need to change your defensive mindset, because if you go into a game with evidently the team that has the best goalie in the league and the best offensive players in the league, if you turn around and say, I want a no-score game, it's not going to happen. No. Because these guys have proven time and time again that they are so talented that against the best defenses out there, they've won. So you need to change your mindset and focus on capitalizing on what you can capitalize on. What's better? Losing because your guys have been trying to get a no-score game the entire time, or okay, we let in 2 points, but we scored 5, which is what I think the Lightning have figured out. They've figured out that, yes, they're going to let some goals through, but as long as they make sure that when they have the opportunities, they capitalize on them, they're scoring. I mean, 3 goals, 5 goals, 5 goals. It's what matters.
And Tampa is such a complete team that they do have the defense to back it up. Victor Hedman is a top 5 defenseman in the league. Mikhail Sergachev is en route to continuing to become a defensive stalwart. You've got Ryan McDonough, who has done it before. Kevin Shattenkirk, who has done it before. All of these guys have been brought in to shore up a defense. Yeah. And yes, the Lightning, or yes, the Stars have a good defense. They have John Klingberg. They have Miro Heiskanen. They have this top-end talent on defense. On offense, it's Tyler Seguin, Joe Pavelski, and some other guys who are filling the spot well, but aren't at the same level. And that's just how it's been.
The thing there is you've got guys that have done it before, and the benefit of having guys that have done it before is that they don't go absolutely ham every single time. Like, if there's a situation where, as a defenseman, you turn around and go, I know I'm not beating him in this situation.
Yeah.
You don't chase him. But then that means that when you come to the ones you can, there's the energy. And when you're coming to the offensive side of the game, you've got the energy. Now, yes, they've had, looking at it, 4 points, 2 points, 2 points, 4 points scored against them. Evidently, they've realised that there is these guys are going to score on them, but they're not going absolutely ham trying to, ridiculously hold them to a 0-point game. I think they'll win it tonight, to be honest, being the fact that the Lightning are on a 3-game win streak. And one thing I think we've learned from professional sports is that even if you lose a game, evidently because you then have to try harder to try and win that game, you're tired. So they're going to have 3 games where they have been tired out because they've been trying to hold on to it, and they've been skating harder than maybe they should. And they're going to go into a back-to-back game tonight where they're going to be tired because, as you said, I mean, yes, there's an element of wanting to, you need it at a certain time for people to watch it, but sorry, it's tiring. This is why we don't podcast at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Yeah, well,
But
or here, so
yeah, well, nice for you. Hey, you've got a bunch of guys that 24 hours ago just had a lost game. They're going to be tired. They're going to not be fully recovered.
Hours, and it's been 24 hours since I think Dallas put in their best effort in the Stanley Cup Final. Maybe outside of game one that they won, to be honest. But I mean, Anton Hudobin stood on his head in that game as well. So it wasn't like it was a brilliant defensive effort. It was good.
Yeah.
But the Lightning had 22 shots in the third period to your 2, and one of them was an empty net goal. So that's not how you win a game. So you had 2 good periods in a 3-period game, and you happened to be able to win it. And so you then put forward your best complete effort in game 4 last night, and now you've got to come back less than 24 hours later, put it together again in game 5. It's not going to happen. No. So that's what so I think that's a unanimous pick. I'm going against my Tampa in 7 pick that I originally had.
Well, you've just given yourself a scenario where you're going to be wrong no matter what happens.
Right.
It's a bold strategy. I don't know if it's going to pay off for you.
We'll see.
I mean, you're going to be wrong no matter what.
So what we'll end on is this. It's another hockey logo thing. Another logo thing in general, to be honest. This week, I saw this pop up on Instagram and could not believe what the caption for it was. So I'm going to send it to you now, Gav.
What are you sending it over?
I'll send it in the Zoom chat, and it should come up.
How?
It's a PNG, so you should be able to get it rather easily. Yeah, there it goes.
I've got to now click a link, which isn't working again. Just send it over Facebook Messenger because I have that.
I understand why these links don't work for you.
I don't know. I'm clicking on them and it just goes nah.
What browser do you use?
Using Google Chrome.
Oh wow. Chrome seems to work for like programs that you have to run through the internet, but not for regular internetness.
The shit is that?
So first of all, what sport do you think it is?
I don't know. It could be lesbian bean wrestling for all I know. It's going to be, if we can find a league for that, that's definitely going to be our next sport that we make predictions on.
Oh, God.
I'm going to try and guess the team. So they're definitely the Bears or the Badgers.
Okay.
Or the Lions. Because that could be any one of those 3 things.
Well, you've already immediately seen the outrage for me, but keep going.
They're definitely from somewhere like quite picturesque and quite pretty, because there's like trees and a river,
the sun
and sun. I mean, it's very clever because it's one of those things that the more you look at it, they're like, oh, they've made the mouth the river and the star its eye and the nose and
shooting star and the sun's ear and
but there's again, why couldn't you just make it like a bear and just go, here's a bear with the bears?
So do you want me to tell you what it is then?
Is it the lesbian bean wrestling team? Is this our new segment?
No, I don't even know what that is. I don't think I want to know what that is, to be honest. This is some concoction that you've brewed in your
I'll send you some videos
messed up brain. This is the Minnesota Wild. This is a hockey team. They play out of St. Cloud or Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And so remember you were talking about it's a bear or a badger or something like that?
Yeah.
You immediately noticed what was discussed on the Instagram post.
Yeah.
Because this was posted on Instagram and the caption was something along the lines of basically, who else just noticed that the Minnesota Wild logo is also a bear? So people apparently didn't notice exactly what you immediately noticed, having never seen this logo before in your entire life. And something that I've seen every day and known this from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a bear because it's the team is the Wild and there's bears in the wild of Minnesota. And everything, as you described, is very cleverly laid out so that it looks like a bear.
Wait. Let's just have a conversation about how teams are named. Okay, let's go through some of the. I'm going to close this for a minute.
Okay.
I'm going to go to now. You know, the hockey ones you can figure out. So let's go through a few teams. Toronto Maple Leafs. They're from Toronto, an area that has a lot of maple trees. Toronto Maple Leafs.
Canada's team.
Yeah. The New York Islanders. They play on New York. New York is an island. New York Islanders. Makes sense. I mean, the Canucks, they're based by, I assume, a bay or the sea. Fair enough.
Vancouver.
The Boston Bruins, that one's been there for hundreds of years. If we go to the NFL, now you have the Texans. They're from Texas. And their logo is some kind of bull. Now, given that they eat a lot of beef down in Texas and it's a lot of beef farms, makes sense. The Buffalo Bills, their logo is a bison. There's a lot of bison around that area, apparently. Makes sense.
Why it's called Buffalo.
Yeah. Chicago Bears, makes sense. Jackson, but then you go to these teams, right? You're from Minnesota. In Minnesota, you may as well be the Minnesota Combine Harvesters because that's what is there a lot of in Minnesota, right? Call them the Minnesota John Deeres because there's a lot of that.
And a great sponsorship right there.
Yeah. Look at what's around you and go, that's what we'll name our team after.
Well, that's what they did. They were like, what's around us? The Wild. Fantastic.
Is there a lot of bears in Minnesota? More than Chicago? More than any other area? Probably not. Is there a wild? Huh?
Probably not more than, but I mean, it is it's a Midwestern state. It's, it's got that feel of mountains, nature, bears.
But it's quite flat. I mean, whoever designed the logo should be very proud of themselves because it's a very clever logo. If the team was called the Wildwood Bears and the place was up in Alaska where there's a lot of rivers, there's a lot of trees, bears, because it's bears in Alaska. That makes sense. But apart from that, just have a think. Go, actually, you know what? What is around us?
Forests.
Like Stevenage, where I personally am, I'll give you the exact location, was where the new a new hawk was not released, but they brought them back. These hawks were re-released. So now in Stevenage, we have hundreds of these hawks around. There is no pigeon left in Stevenage because these hawks have had them. Right?
Finally.
So, yeah, there was just a rename of one of Stevenage's football teams. And they called them the Hawks because there's a lot of hawks around. And it makes sense.
on that note, of things that do make sense,
Yeah.
we'll wrap it up. Don't know how much sense Gavin tends to make, but he tries to sometimes.
It's getting there, isn't it? I mean,
Getting
you asked
We'll
me to do a podcast.
we'll see you
before
next
10
week.
o'clock.
We'll
Yeah.
see you next week, where hopefully Gavin has better luck with his NFL picks. Bottas has better luck than we think he's going to have tomorrow, and the Lightning are Stanley Cup champions.